Hello everyone, I'm Arunima from Knit and Otter, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make mitered squares two ways using Tunisian crochet. So here are the two squares. So this one is made using an increased method and this one is using the decreased method. I'll show you how to do both of them in detail, and after making the square I've added a border to each one of them, so I'll show you how to do that as well. I have a bunch of video tutorials and free patterns on my channel and on my blog. So if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to my channel and check out the other videos that I have. So let's get started with this. I'm going to start with the increase method first. And so how you go about doing that is you start with a chain 3. So I'm going to make the slip knot and chain 3. So that's 1, 2, 3, and make your foundation row with 3 stitches. So that's 3, 1, 2, 3 loops on your hook. And I have a separate tutorial for making the foundation row, and if you want to check that out, I'll add a link to it in the description below. And I'm going to make this square using Tunisian simple stitches. Again, I have a separate tutorial for that as well, and I'm going to add a link to it in the description. So here I have 3 stitches and I'm going to make the reverse pass. So that's 1, 2, 3. And that's how you begin. And this over here is this portion. Now for the next row, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my middle stitch with a stitch marker so I can see which one it is. And so for this next row, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a full stitch increase. So if you look at this space, this is the center stitch and this is that first stitch. So in between this I'm going to make a full stitch and that'll be an increase, and then I'm going to make a top stitch on top of this stitch right here. So for that I have to identify the vertical bar, this one behind this stitch. It's slightly tricky to find it, but again I have a separate tutorial for this which will explain in detail how to find that top horizontal bar. And it's only hard the first couple of times, but after that it gets easier. And then I'm going to do another full stitch increase. So this is between that last edge stitch and the one that we had marked as the center stitch, and then an edge stitch or the last stitch by picking up these 2 vertical bars. So that is a total of 5 stitches on my hook, 5 loops on my hook. So with every row you're going to add 2 new stitches, so 2 extra loops on your hook at the end of the forward pass with every row. So making the reverse pass just as I normally would. So that's how it's looking. And I could move this stitch marker up here on this stitch now, which will be the center for the next row, but I'm going to keep it where it is because I can identify it just by looking at this. But if you feel like that might be better, so you can at this point remove the stitch marker and move it up. For the next row, I am going to now make a simple stitch on this full stitch from the previous row, and then now I'm at the center again. So this is my center stitch, so I'm going to make a full stitch increase before and 1 full stitch increase after it. So a full stitch increase before, and then here I'm going to make that top stitch. So finding that top horizontal bar make that top stitch, and then another full stitch increase, and then a simple stitch, and then the edge stitch. So that's 7, 2, 4, 6, 7 loops. So we started with 3, then we had 5, and now we have 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you see, we've already started to see that 90-degree angle here, this one, where if you look at this, this is the part that we're building right now. So this pattern is just a repeat where you'd make simple stitches all the way till that center stitch, and then you'd make one full stitch increase before it, one full stitch increase after it, and then complete it with simple stitches. So making a few more rows, so one simple stitch, one more simple stitch until before that center stitch. So here I'm able to identify that center stitch by looking at the stitch marker, but you could move this up as needed. So I'm now going to make a full stitch increase, and then I'm going to make a top stitch. So the reason I use top stitches here is because this top stitch is slightly taller than simple stitches, and because it's the diagonal, this stitch will form the diagonal over here. That extra height really helps. So that's the top stitch there, and then a full stitch increase, and then simple stitches to complete the row. Doing the reverse pass, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So you'll always have an odd number of stitches in every row for this pattern, and that's how it's looking. So I'm going to make a few more rows. So 1, 2, 3 simple stitches, and then I'm at the center again, and then a full stitch increase, a top stitch, and then a full stitch increase, and then simple stitches to complete. And the return pass. So that is 11 stitches. I'm going to make a few more rows so you can see how it looks. Four simple stitches, and I'm at the center again, so I'm going to increase, and then the top stitch, another increase, and then simple stitches. So another thing to remember is to make these last edge stitches slightly loose, because they tend to become tight, and then you'll have one side that's slightly tighter than the rest of it. So just make sure that all of your loops are sitting at the same height. So if it is, for instance, if it's tight like this, then you can see that this loop doesn't match up to the height of the rest of it. So just pull it slightly so it matches the height of the rest of the row, and then chain one, and then yarn over, pull through two all the way till the beginning. So this is how it's looking after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. For every row that you're on, you'd have that many stitches before and after the center stitch. So if you look at this, this is how it is. I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is where I am. I'll make 2 or 3 more rows, and then I'll show you how to do the border for this. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a total of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because we don't do anything for the first one. And then a full stitch increase and a top stitch, and full stitch increase, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, make sure that the last stitch matches the height of the rest of the loops, and then the return pass. So if you look at this, it doesn't really look like an exact square, but it really is. Blocking will help fix it. For this one, I didn't really block. All I did was I added that border, and that made this look like a square. So that's what I'm going to do now. So to begin the edging, first I'm going to complete this by making that bind off row. So I'm going to start with making simple stitches. So I do a slip stitch bind off. So make sure that your slip stitches are slightly loose, because otherwise making a border on top of it is going to be very difficult. I guess it also depends on the kind of yarn you're using. I'm using cotton yarn for this tutorial, and it doesn't stretch at all. So if I'm not careful, and if I don't leave these loose, then I can't make a border on top of it. It gets very difficult. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 simple stitches, and then for the bind off I'm going to do the same thing as I would in the other rows, where I'd make a full stitch and then I'd just pull through that bind off, and then the next one will be a top stitch, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch, then a full stitch and a slip, and then simple stitches with slip stitch bind off. The other way to do a bind off is using single crochet stitches, and I have a separate video where I talk about this in detail if you'd like to take a look. But for this I'm going to just do slip stitches. So this is how it's looking, and now let's go ahead and add a border to it. So now we've ended here, and I'm going to start giving it an edge or a border. And so we had 7 rows, so I made 7 rows. It's easy to count from the diagonal, so that was my first stitch here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, and plus there's that bind off, so that's not counted towards the count in the rows. 7 rows, so I'm going to make 7 single crochet stitches starting from here. So I haven't removed this loop from the hook. I'm just going to start doing single crochet stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And now I've reached this corner, and at the bottom of the stitch, that's where, so if you see this, the stitch marked by the stitch marker, at the bottom of this I'm going to make 3 single crochet stitches. So that's going to mark my corner. So 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to make 7 single crochet stitches on this edge. So that's 1, and I'm going to weave in this tail as I go. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now this corner is slightly tricky because when we were binding off on this side, that reduces 1 stitch, so I'm going to have to add 1 not really add one, but I'm just going to find another spot to make that corner stitch. So if you just open this a little, there's this little space in between. This is the reverse pass chain of that row. So I'm going to make my corner stitches over there. So that's 1, 2, 3. So after making this corner, I'm going to start with this first stitch over here. It's slightly hidden because of the 3 single crochet stitches I've made, but I'm going to make 7 single crochets now. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this is the corner, and I'm going to make 3 single crochets in that corner. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then 7 single crochet stitches at the edge. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm at a point where I'm going to make my corner here. So that's 1, 2, 3, and this was the first single crochet that we had started this with. So I'm going to slip stitch and join, and that makes my square. So this is how it's looking with 7 rows, and this is how it looks with 9. I didn't really have to block this, but you can see how it wasn't really looking like it was a square before the edging, but the edging gives it that evenness, and it becomes a nice little square. I haven't blocked any of these, and so you can see how they look like squares at this point. So this concludes how you make this with increases, and I haven't seen metered squares made like this before, but I think I saw a tutorial once which talked about it, and I tried it, and this worked out really well, especially when you don't know what the size of your squares needs to be, or if you just want to start at one corner and keep making a very large square until you reach the size that you want, and you don't know what the dimensions are going to be. So I can see where this will be useful, and it looks great. Those top stitches at the center give that giving it the extra little height that the stitches need, so that works out really well. So that's about it for this technique. Now I'm going to move on to making the metered square with the decrease. This is the more traditional approach that I've seen, and this is how I've seen them made mostly, and I'm holding it the wrong side, so this is how it is. And so let me quickly show you how it looks at the back also. So these look about the same at the back as well, so it's not much difference. So this square is made with 9 stitches on each side, and the tutorial, if you saw the first part of this, I made this with 7. So I'm going to make another one with 7 with the decrease technique. So to start, I'm going to chain twice into 7, that's 14, and then plus 1 for the center stitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the center stitch 1, and then another 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and make the foundation row just like you normally would. So this is how it looks at the end of the forward pass. I have 15 loops on the hook, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, and now I have to identify that center stitch. So I'm going to put a stitch marker at the 8th, so 2, 4, 6, 8. So this marks the stitch which has equal number of stitches on both sides. So there are 7 on one side and 7 on the other. So I'm going to make my return pass, and this is the part which is important in this square. So you have to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just like you normally would. This is one less than the actual number of stitches that was supposed to be on this side, and then yarn over and pull through 4 loops. So you're converting these 3 stitches into 1, so it's a decrease from 3 to 1. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Pull through 4 loops, and then yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning. Now for the next row, I'm going to make the forward pass using simple stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I have 5 stitches here, and I have this little cluster here which was 3 stitches reduced to 1. So I'm going to find that back horizontal bar and make a stitch there, and then simple stitches for the rest. Now at this point you could move this stitch marker here to this one, which is the center, but I'm not going to do so. For me, it's easy enough to identify the center stitch by just keeping the stitch marker there. So I'm going to make the return pass, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then yarn over, pull through 2 all the way to the beginning. So that's how it's looking. Now for the next row, it's the exact same thing. You just have to keep doing that, where you decrease the center 3 stitches and make it 1. So you're reducing 2 with every row. So I'm going to start with a simple stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this top stitch here where these 3 stitches from the previous row were combined to 1, and then 5 simple stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and now when you make your return pass, again you'll have 4 simple stitches and then 1 decrease and then 4 simple stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and now I'm at the point where I'm at the center. So 1 stitch on this side and 1 stitch on the other side. So this is my center stitch, 1 stitch on one side and 1 stitch on the other side, and we have to combine those and make them 1. So yarn over, pull through 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then yarn over, pull through 2 to the beginning. So that's how it's looking, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to close this square all the way. So that's 1, 2, 3, that's total of 4, and a top stitch, and then 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then yarn over, pull through 2. So that's on the return pass there'll be 1 less, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then yarn over, pull through 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then yarn over, pull through 2 3 times, and then now that's 1, 2, 3 simple stitches, 1 top stitch, and then 3 simple stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then the reverse pass. So that's 1, 2, and yarn over pull through 4. So that's 1 2 3 4, and yarn over pull through 2 and 2. So the next one is 1 simple 1 and 2, and then a top stitch, and then a 1 and 2, and then yarn over pull through 1, and yarn over pull through 1 2 3 4, and yarn over pull through 1. At this point I have this first stitch. I'm going to make a top stitch, and a last stitch. At this point I will not chain one. When you have 3 loops on your hook, just yarn over and pull through all 3. So this is how it's looking. Now I'm going to go ahead and give it a border. So I'm going to now start making the edge for this. For this one, there will be, so for a 7-row square, there'll be 6 single crochet stitches in this edge here. So I'm not cutting the yarn. I'm just going to continue making the edge stitches by starting first in this one. So that's 1. I'm going to make single crochet stitches for this. So 1 2 3 4 5 and 6, and then this will be my corner, and it's 1 2 and 3, and then 6 single crochet stitches. That's 1 2 3 4 5 and 6, and then 1 corner stitch here just under that first center stitch. 1 2 3 and 6 single crochet stitches in the edge. So it's 1 2 3 4 5 and 6, and then the corner stitches here in this stitch, which is a little tight right now, but I'm going to try and insert my hook there. So it's 1 2 3 and then 6. So 1 2 3 4 5 6, and now I'm at that last stitch that was that the last decrease. So here I'm going to make 1 2 3, that's the corner, and then join with that first single crochet. So that's how it's looking. So this looks like a proper square as well, and this is slightly smaller than this one because I guess it's because of the extra bind off row that we add, but outside of that these are the same. So this is how they're looking, and this is how the original swatches that I made were. So this one is made using decreases, this one is made using increases, and they work up differently. They both make squares, and you can choose which one you like to use for your projects. So that's all there is to this technique. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And I have a bunch of other tutorials on my channel and a lot of free patterns on my blog, so feel free to check them out as well. And if you like this video, please like, and again subscribe to my channel if you like it. I'll see you in my other videos. Bye bye.